Arav had never imagined that an ordinary day in the small restaurant kitchen could change the rhythm of his life. He worked quietly, always arriving early, always leaving late, and rarely speaking unless someone asked him something. The kitchen was his world, the warm smell of spices, the soft steam from boiling pots, the sound of knives gently tapping the chopping board. It was the place where he felt safe. He worked hard because he had responsibilities at home, and he liked knowing that his effort brought comfort to the people he loved. His days were simple, predictable, and steady. That morning started like any other. He tied his apron, washed his hands, and prepared the vegetables for the day. The restaurant was small, but always busy, especially during lunch hours. The owner, a cheerful man who treated the staff like family, came to Arav and said, "Today you'll have a new helper. She's joining as a trainee. Show her how things work." Arav nodded quietly. He didn't ask questions. He never did. Around 10 o'clock, he heard light footsteps approaching the kitchen door. When he looked up, he saw a young woman standing there, with uncertain eyes. She held her bag tightly, as if unsure whether she was in the right place. She was dressed simply, her hair tied back in a hurried way, as if she had rushed to get ready, but there was a calm softness in her face, something warm that made a person stop for a second. "Are you Arav?" she asked in a small voice. He nodded. "I'm Zara. Today is my first day." She gave a nervous smile, the kind people give when they want to appear confident, but their heart is shaking a little inside. Arav gestured toward the apron hanging on the wall for new trainees. She took it and wore it, though she struggled with the knots. He helped her tie it properly, and she thanked him shyly. There was nothing dramatic in their first words, nothing extraordinary, but something gentle passed between them, a quiet, strange comfort, as if they had known each other from somewhere. The morning work began. Zara tried to follow every instruction carefully, but being new, she moved a little too fast, a little too unsure. Arav noticed her hands trembling slightly while washing the vegetables. She didn't complain about anything, didn't talk too much. She simply focused on every task with full dedication. When the lunch hour rush arrived, the kitchen became busier than usual. Orders were shouted, plates were being prepared one after the other, and everyone moved quickly. Zara wanted to help, but the pressure made her nervous. She reached for a kitchen knife from the counter, turning at the same moment to ask Arav what she should chop next. Because she turned too quickly, she ended up standing very close to him. The knife was in her hand, raised slightly because she had just picked it up. For a second, it looked like an awkward scene, not dangerous, just unexpected. Arav froze in surprise, and Zara's eyes widened as she realized how it must have looked. Their faces were only a foot apart. The kitchen noise faded for a moment in both their minds. Zara's cheeks turned pink from embarrassment, and she quickly lowered the knife to the table. I didn't mean to stand like that," she whispered, her eyes full of apology. Arav didn't say anything at first. He wasn't scared. He was simply surprised because he never stood that close to anyone. But what caught his attention wasn't the knife she had been holding, it was her expression. Her eyes had a softness in them, a warmth that felt completely different from the busy energy of the kitchen. There was no fear, no harshness, only a gentle sincerity that made the moment unforgettable. He nodded calmly, signaling that it was completely fine. To ease her embarrassment, he handed her a tray of vegetables and said, "These need to be chopped like this." His voice was quiet, but kind. Zara let out a breath of relief and smiled, a real one this time. "Thank you. I thought I ruined my first day already." Arav shook his head. "You're doing fine." That simple sentence meant more to Zara than he realized. She had joined the job because her family needed financial support. She had no experience, no training, but she had promised herself that she would work hard and learn everything she could. She wanted to prove to herself that she was capable. Hearing even a small encouragement made her feel lighter. As the day continued, she tried even harder. Whenever she made a mistake, Arav corrected her gently. He never raised his voice. He never made her feel bad. And every time he explained something, she listened with full attention. They hardly talked about personal things, yet an invisible thread of connection slowly began forming between them. During a short break, Zara sat near the back door of the kitchen, trying to catch her breath. Arav was cleaning the counter when he noticed her looking a little overwhelmed. He walked over and handed her a glass of cold water. "It gets easier," he said softly. She took the glass with a small smile. "I hope so. I was so nervous today." And then that moment with the knife. She covered her face with her hands, laughing shyly. "You must think I'm strange," Arav simply said. "It happens. First days are always like that." His calm voice comforted her. She realized he wasn't someone who judged quickly. He was quiet, but observant. He didn't talk much, but when he did, his words felt meaningful. They returned to work, but now the air between them was slightly lighter. They exchanged small glances, tiny nods, soft smiles whenever one of them managed to complete a task correctly. Zara felt safer knowing he was nearby, guiding her without making her feel small. Arav, on the other hand, found himself noticing things he normally ignored: the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when concentrating, the way she hummed softly when she worked, the way she tried to hide her nervousness behind a courageous smile. By late evening, the kitchen grew quiet again. The rush had ended. The staff cleaned up, and some began to leave. Zara stayed back to wash the last set of utensils. Arav worked beside her, though his shift technically ended 20 minutes ago. When she realized he hadn't gone home yet, she looked at him curiously. "You can leave if you want. I'll finish this," she said. He shook his head. "It's your first day. You don't have to do everything alone." She paused, touched by the kindness in his simple gesture. No one had stood beside her like that in a long time. She felt a strange comfort she couldn't explain. As they washed and cleaned in silence, their hands sometimes brushing lightly when they reached for the same thing. Each accidental touch made her heart skip, though she said nothing. Arav felt it too, a quiet awareness, but he didn't let it show. When the last utensil was placed on the rack, Zara let out a soft sigh of achievement. "I survived my first day," she said with a proud little laugh. Arav allowed himself a small smile. "You did well. Thank you for everything today," she said gently. "If you weren't here, I might have cried in the storeroom." "I don't think you would," he replied. "You're stronger than you think." She looked at him with an expression he couldn't fully understand, yet a mix of gratitude, admiration, and something warm that touched his heart in a quiet way. Walking out of the restaurant, Zara carried her bag with tired hands, but her heart felt strangely full. That odd moment earlier standing close to him with the knife in her hand replayed in her mind, not because of embarrassment now, but because that moment had shown her something unexpected. She had seen kindness in his eyes, calmness, a silent strength. Arav, watching her leave, felt something shift inside him too. In just one day, this new person had brought a gentle change to his quiet world. He didn't fully understand it yet, but he knew one thing. Tomorrow would not feel like a normal day anymore. It would feel like a day worth waiting for. Their story had only just begun, and neither of them knew how deeply it would shape their lives in the days to come. But on that first day, with a knife in her hand and warmth in her eyes, a simple misunderstanding had opened the door to an unforgettable connection. Zara's second day at the restaurant felt completely different from her first. She woke up early, checked her bag twice, and left home with a strange excitement she couldn't explain. She told herself it was because she wanted to do well at her new job. But deep inside, she knew it was also because she would see Arav again. Something about him made her feel safe, even though they had barely known each other for a full day. When she entered the kitchen, she saw Arav already at work, just like yesterday. He was slicing vegetables with calm focus, the way someone works when they have been doing the same task for years. He didn't see her walk in at first, so she stood silently for a moment, watching him. His quiet nature fascinated her. Most people talked loudly in busy places like this, but Arav didn't need noise to fill the room. His presence alone made the space feel steady. When he finally looked up and noticed her, Zara gave a small, shy wave. Arav nodded in greeting. He wasn't expressive, but there was a softness in his eyes that told her he was glad she came back. She tied her apron this time without struggling and joined him at the counter. "What should I start with today?" she asked, eager to learn. He pointed to the vegetables. "Cut these. I'll show you the size." She watched his hands closely as he demonstrated. His movements were smooth and steady, almost calming to observe. Zara tried copying him, but her slices came out a little uneven. Arav didn't laugh or criticize. He simply said, "It takes practice," and adjusted her hand position gently. She appreciated the way he corrected her, not like a teacher who scolds, but like a friend who wants her to improve. As they worked side by side, the morning passed quietly. Sometimes they talked about small things like how busy the restaurant gets on weekends, or how the owner sometimes forgets where he puts the extra plates. Zara laughed easily, and Arav smiled more than he usually did. Their conversations were simple, but somehow meaningful. During a short break, Zara sat near the back door again. Arav was cleaning the counters when she noticed him looking at her with a thoughtful expression. "You're learning fast," he said. The compliment surprised her. "Really? I feel like I'm messing up all the time." "You're trying," he replied. "That's more important." His words stayed with her for the rest of the day. It had been a long time since someone genuinely appreciated her efforts. At home, her family depended on her, but they were too stressed to compliment anything. At her previous part-time jobs, no one had bothered to notice her improvement. But here, in this small kitchen, Arav noticed everything, even the things she didn't notice about herself. As the days passed, they grew more comfortable with each other. Zara learned how to chop vegetables, prepare sauces, and handle orders without panicking. Whenever she struggled, Arav quietly stepped in to help. Sometimes he would hand her a tool she forgot she needed, before she even asked. Sometimes she would finish a task he had just started, understanding without words what he was trying to do. Their teamwork became natural, smooth, and almost wordless at times. One evening, when the rush hour had just ended, Zara wiped sweat from her forehead and said, "I never knew kitchen work was so tiring." "It gets easier after a while," Arav replied. "You say that a lot," she teased playfully. He gave her a small smile. "Because it's true." Zara laughed, and Arav found himself watching her a little longer than he intended. She had a bright energy that made the tiring days feel lighter. She talked with enthusiasm, worked with dedication, and carried a spark that drew people toward her without her even trying. Sometimes Arav caught himself listening to her even when she was talking to someone else. He didn't understand why, but her voice made him feel calm in a way no one's ever had. He wasn't used to feeling this kind of connection. His life had always been simple: work, home, sleep, repeat. There was no space for emotions, no space for surprises. But Zara had entered his routine, like a warm breeze passing through a quiet room, bringing life to corners he hadn't paid attention to before. One afternoon, Zara accidentally added too much salt to a dish. She panicked, thinking the owner would be upset, but Arav quietly prepared another portion and whispered, "We'll redo it fast. No one will know." His calm presence eased her worry, and she smiled gratefully. Later that day, she burned her finger slightly while removing a hot pot lid. It wasn't serious, but she winced in pain. Arav immediately brought a bowl of cool water and said, "Keep your hand here for a few minutes." His concern felt genuine, not just professional. "You're always saving me," she joked softly. He shook his head. "You're learning. Everyone needs help sometimes." Zara looked at him with warm eyes. "You never needed help?" Arav paused, as if thinking about something from long ago. Then he said, "Maybe I did, but I didn't ask." There was a quiet heaviness in his voice that made Zara curious, but she didn't push. She sensed he was someone who opened his heart slowly, carefully, and she respected that. One evening, they both ended up leaving at the same time. It wasn't planned, it just happened. As they walked out together, Zara noticed the sky turning orange. The evening breeze was cool, and the world outside felt peaceful. "Do you always go home alone?" she asked. "Yes," Doesn't it feel lonely? Arav looked ahead before answering. Sometimes, but I got used to it. Zara nodded, wondering how someone so kind and thoughtful could spend so much time in silence. She wished she could ask more, but she didn't want to intrude. When they reached the main road, she turned to him. Thank you for everything these days. You don't have to thank me every day, he said quietly. But I want to, she replied with a smile. Something in her smile made his heart feel unfamiliar warmth. He said good night, but his voice was softer than usual. Over the next weeks, their connection deepened without either of them realizing how natural it had become. Zara brought small snacks from home, sometimes homemade bread, a sweet dish her mother made, or fruit she thought Arav might like. He never asked for them, but she offered them in a shy, gentle way. Arav rarely accepted food from others, but with Zara, he always did. One day, she asked him, "Do you ever take breaks?" "You work nonstop," he shrugged. "I'm used to it." "That's not healthy," she said, sounding genuinely concerned. "You should rest too." Arav didn't know how to respond. No one had ever advised him to take care of himself before. It felt strange, but comforting. There were moments when they worked so closely that their hands brushed or their shoulders touched lightly. Zara felt a spark every time, though she tried to stay focused. Arav pretended not to notice, but the small touches stayed with him long after they happened. The staff also began noticing their bond. The owner once joked, "You two work like you can read each other's minds." Zara laughed awkwardly, and Arav simply lowered his gaze. But inside, both felt something warm bloom at the thought. One evening, it rained heavily. The roads outside the restaurant were filled with puddles. Zara looked worried because she hadn't brought an umbrella. Arav quietly pulled an extra umbrella from his bag, old, but still good, and held it out to her. "You can take this." "What about you?" she asked. "I'll manage." Zara hesitated. Then she said, "We can share it. It's big enough." Arav froze for a second, unsure how to respond. But Zara opened the umbrella and stepped closer, making space for him. They walked slowly through the rain, close enough that their shoulders brushed. Zara felt a soothing comfort in his presence, and Arav felt a calm he hadn't felt in years. The rain tapped softly on the umbrella, and the streetlights reflected in the puddles. Neither of them spoke for a long time, but silence felt pleasant, not awkward. It was the kind of silence shared by people who trusted each other without needing explanations. When they reached her street, Zara stopped and looked at him. "Thank you," she said softly. Arav nodded. "Get home safe." She held the umbrella for a moment longer, not ready to let go. But finally, she handed it back to him gently. As he walked away, she watched him disappear down the road, feeling something deep and warm in her heart. Every day after that, their connection grew in small but meaningful ways. A shared smile, a soft laugh, a helping hand, a quiet conversation during breaks. None of it was dramatic, but each moment slowly brought their hearts closer. Neither of them said it out loud, but both had started looking forward to coming to work not because of the job, but because of each other. Their friendship had turned into something deeper, something tender and unspoken. And without realizing it, they were becoming important parts of each other's world. Their story was no longer just about work. It was becoming a journey of two people, slowly finding comfort, trust, and gentle affection in places they never expected. The weeks passed quietly, and the bond between Arav and Zara kept growing in small but meaningful ways. Their friendship had become the warmest part of each day, something both of them waited for without ever saying it aloud. They didn't make big promises, they didn't exchange dramatic words, and they didn't even talk about feelings directly. Yet, every moment around each other felt soft, steady, and full of unspoken emotions. Their connection was like a gentle stream, slow, peaceful, and impossible to ignore. One evening, after a long and tiring shift, the restaurant finally settled down. The noise faded, the customers left, and the kitchen grew quiet. Most of the staff had already changed and gone home, But Zara stayed behind to finish the last few tasks. Arav remained as well, helping her even though his work was already done. He did it naturally. Not because anyone asked him to, but because she was still there. Zara wiped her hands on her apron and stepped out the back door to get a little fresh air. The sky was beginning to turn dark, and a soft wind blew across her face. She sat on the steps, hugging her knees to her chest, feeling the heaviness of the day finally catching up to her. It wasn't just the work that tired her, it was everything happening in her personal life. She had been trying to balance too much. Responsibilities at home, pressure to earn, worries about the future. She had been strong for months, but that evening, the weight felt too much. Arav noticed she hadn't returned after a few minutes, so he walked toward the back. When he saw her sitting with her head resting on her knees, his steps slowed. He didn't want to disturb her, but he also didn't want to leave her alone with whatever was troubling her. So he quietly sat beside her, leaving just enough space to make her comfortable. She didn't look up at first. She knew the familiar calmness of his presence without even seeing him. It made her heart feel a little lighter. "Long day?" he asked softly. Zara let out a breath. Very long. Arav didn't say anything else, giving her time. She appreciated that about him. He never pushed her to talk, never filled silence with unnecessary words. He simply sat with her, like a quiet support she could lean on without fear. After a while, she lifted her head and looked at the sky. Her eyes were tired, but there was a deep honesty in them. "Arav, do you ever feel like life keeps putting weight on your shoulders? And no matter how much you try, it just gets heavier?" He turned slightly toward her, listening with full attention. "Yes," he said. "I've felt that." His gentle response opened something inside her. She took a slow breath, trying to keep her emotions steady. "Sometimes I feel like I'm doing everything wrong. I try to help at home. I try to work hard here. But nothing ever feels enough." "You're doing your best," Arav said quietly. "It doesn't feel like it," she whispered, her voice trembling a little. "My family depends on me. They expect so much. And I understand why. But some days, I just wish someone would ask me if I'm okay. Or tell me that I'm not alone." Arav's heart softened. He didn't know all the details of her life, but he understood the feeling she described too well. He had spent years taking care of his own family, with no one to lean on. He knew how it felt to be strong on the outside but tired on the inside. "You're not alone," he said gently. Zara looked at him, her eyes filled with unshed tears. "Sometimes I feel like I am." "I'm here," Arav said simply. His voice held a sincerity she couldn't ignore. "You don't have to carry everything alone." His words were like a warm blanket around her heart. She blinked slowly, letting the comfort of his presence calm her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Their silence wasn't empty, it was full of understanding. After a few minutes, they went back inside to finish their remaining tasks. Zara felt lighter, though she didn't fully know why. Something in Arav's steady voice had given her a small piece of peace she hadn't felt in a long time. Later that night, while cutting vegetables, she suddenly remembered the funny and awkward moment of their first meeting, when she had turned too quickly with a knife in her hand and accidentally stood too close to him. The memory made her smile. Without thinking too much, she picked up a vegetable knife again. Not to frighten him, but to recreate the moment playfully. Arav was arranging ingredients when Zara stepped a little closer, holding the knife loosely at her side, just like that first day. "Arav," she said in a soft, teasing voice. He looked up, slightly confused at first, but then he understood what she was doing. His eyes widened a little, then softened. "You remember that day?" he asked. Zara laughed lightly. "How could I forget? I was so embarrassed. I thought you'd never want to talk to me again." Arav shook his head with a small smile. "I wasn't upset." "I know," she said, "but I wanted to make that moment right this time." She slowly lowered the knife and placed it gently on the counter. Then she looked at him, not playfully now, but with a kind of quiet seriousness that made his heartbeat steady itself. "Arav, can I ask you something?" she said softly. "Yes." She hesitated, gathering courage. Her voice came out gentle, but full of meaning. "Can I trust you? I mean, really trust you? Can I rely on you to stay in my life?" Arav froze for a second, not because he was confused, but because her words landed straight in his heart. Zara wasn't asking him to make promises he couldn't keep. She wasn't asking for anything dramatic. She was simply asking if he would choose to stay. He looked into her eyes filled with a mix of hope, fear, honesty, and something even deeper. Something tender. "Yes," he said softly. "You can trust me." Zara exhaled, her shoulders relaxing. A gentle smile touched her lips. There was no fear in her expression now, only warmth. She took a small step closer. "Then, will you be my partner? Not just in work, but in life? Someone I can lean on, someone I can talk to, someone who won't walk away?" Her voice trembled at the end, as if she was afraid of saying too much. Arav felt something shift inside him, a quiet realization that she wasn't just asking him to be part of her life. She was offering him a place in her heart, a place she didn't offer easily. He reached out slowly and touched her hand, the one that had held the knife just moments ago. His touch was light, respectful, but steady. "I won't walk away," he said gently. "I want to stay." Zara's eyes softened, and she held his hand back, her fingers curling around his with a comfort that felt natural, like it had always belonged there. They stood in the quiet kitchen, surrounded by the smell of cooked food and the warmth of dim lights. It wasn't a dramatic setting. There were no candles, no romantic music, no perfect scenery, just two people standing together, sharing a promise that came straight from their hearts. For the first time in a long time, Zara felt safe, truly safe. And for the first time in years, Arav felt seen not for his work or responsibilities, but for who he really was. Their connection wasn't built in one moment. It had grown slowly, through small conversations, shared tasks, quiet support, and gentle understanding. But this moment, this simple, honest confession turned their unspoken bond into a real beginning. Zara looked up at him, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you for choosing to stay." Arav squeezed her hand softly. "Thank you for trusting me." Neither of them knew what challenges the future would bring. But in that moment, they knew something important. Whatever came next, they wouldn't face it alone. Their hearts had finally spoken what their eyes had been saying for weeks. And the story that began with awkwardness, nervous smiles, and a knife held in trembling hands had now turned into a quiet promise of companionship, trust, and gentle love. Part 4 begins at a moment when life was changing slowly but surely for him. After everything he had faced, the struggles, the disappointments, the unexpected lessons, he finally started understanding himself better. He was not the same person anymore. He was calmer, wiser, and more patient. He had learned that real growth does not come from comfort. It comes from moments that test your heart, your emotions, and your strength. And now, as he stepped into this new phase of life, he felt a soft kind of courage inside him. It wasn't loud, and it wasn't dramatic. It was simple, steady, and peaceful. He began paying attention to small things that he once ignored. Early morning light coming through the window, the quiet sound of birds, the calm feeling of drinking tea alone, the gentle breeze in the evening. He had always been too busy to notice these things. But now, he felt grateful for every little moment. It was as if life was telling him, "You still have many good things around you." He realized he could choose to feel stressed or choose to feel grateful. And now, he was choosing peace. Even though many things had improved, he still thought about the past sometimes. He wondered why certain things had happened, why certain people had changed, and why he had faced so many challenges. But every time he thought deeply, he found the same answer inside himself. Without those experiences, he wouldn't have become the person he was now. He understood that every difficulty had pushed him toward maturity, and slowly, he stopped questioning the past and accepted it as a necessary part of his journey. He also started rebuilding his relationships, but very carefully. He no longer wanted to be surrounded by people who drained his energy or made him doubt himself. He wanted people who brought peace, honesty, and positivity. So he created boundaries not to push people away, but to protect his own mind. Some people didn't understand it at first, but he knew it was important for his well-being. He had learned that sometimes staying away from certain people is also a way of loving yourself. Day by day, he grew emotionally stronger. He no longer reacted quickly or harshly. Instead, he took time to think before speaking. He learned to listen more and argue less. He learned to stay calm even when things didn't go his way. These changes didn't happen in one day. They were slow and steady, like the way a seed grows into a tree. But the changes were real and permanent. He started setting small goals for himself. He didn't want big, unrealistic plans anymore. He wanted practical steps he could follow without stressing himself. He made a routine, something simple but effective. He focused on improving his skills, taking care of his health, and growing his confidence. Every day he took one step, even if it was small. And these small steps started creating big results. People around him began noticing the change. They saw a different glow on his face. They felt calmness in his voice. They saw confidence in his decisions. Some people appreciated these changes genuinely, while others felt surprised. But he didn't change for anyone's approval. He changed because he finally understood that inner peace is more valuable than anything else. There were still moments when he felt emotional. Sometimes old memories came back unexpectedly. Sometimes he felt a little lonely. Sometimes he wondered about people who used to be close to him but were no longer around. But instead of letting these feelings hurt him, he used them as reminders of how far he had come. He stopped seeing them as wounds and started seeing them as lessons. And with time, those memories stopped affecting him the way they once did. One day, something unexpected happened. He met someone new during a normal, average day. It wasn't planned, and it wasn't dramatic. It was just a simple conversation with a stranger who quickly felt familiar. They talked naturally, like they had known each other for a long time. There was no pressure, no fear, and no confusion. It was easy, calm, and pleasant. He didn't feel the need to pretend or hide his true self. And for the first time in a long while, he felt a genuine connection forming. This person had a positive energy that made him feel comfortable. They didn't judge him, didn't rush him, and didn't expect anything from him. They were simply kind, and their kindness slowly began healing the last few pieces of his heart. He had almost forgotten what it felt like to enjoy someone's company without overthinking. But this new connection felt different. It felt pure. They started talking more frequently, sharing small details about their lives, their dreams, and their experiences. He liked the way this person listened to him without interrupting. He liked how they understood him even when he struggled to find the right words. He liked their presence, not overwhelming, not demanding, just warm and steady. It was something he had always wanted but never received fully in the past, but he didn't rush into anything. He took his time. He knew that good things grow slowly. And he didn't want to repeat old mistakes. He wanted this connection to grow naturally, so he stayed patient, honest, and respectful. And the more he understood this person, the more he felt hopeful again. As weeks passed, the bond between them grew even stronger. They supported each other emotionally, motivated each other during difficult days, and celebrated small wins together. It was a balanced, healthy relationship. They trusted each other and communicated openly. Something he once feared doing. But now he trusted the process because he finally trusted himself. One evening, while walking outside, he looked up at the sky. The sunset was beautiful, soft, orange, pink, and golden shades blending peacefully. He smiled quietly, realizing how much his life had changed. Not because everything became perfect, but because he learned to appreciate life even when it wasn't perfect. He learned to find happiness in simple moments. He learned to value peace more than anything else. He also realized that happiness doesn't always arrive with noise. Sometimes it arrives silently, in the form of maturity, healing, or a person who understands you without effort. And that is exactly what had happened. His life now felt stable, balanced, and meaningful. He wasn't chasing anyone, and he wasn't trying to prove anything. He was simply living with honesty and gratitude. The person he had become was something he could be proud of, someone strong, calm, kind, and wiser than before. He finally accepted that every chapter of life has a purpose. Some chapters teach you patience, some teach you strength, some teach you self-worth, and some bring new people who change your life in a beautiful way. His journey had all these chapters, and each one shaped him into a better version of himself. The future didn't scare him anymore. It felt open, bright, and full of possibilities. He didn't know exactly what destiny planned for him, but he was ready for whatever came next. He was walking forward with a peaceful heart, carrying hope, gratitude, and a quiet confidence that everything would fall into place at the right time. His story didn't end with pain or loss. It ended with growth, healing, and a new beginning. And sometimes, that is the best ending a real-life story can have. Not dramatic, not perfect, but beautifully peaceful.